Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Redmen TV and your latest episode of Oppo Preview. My name is Dan Clubb. I am delighted to be joined by Devil's Advocate host and Matchday Reporter for BBC Radio Manchester, Gaz Drinkwater, for this one. Gaz, my friend, how are you doing? You okay?
I'm okay, mate. I can't say that this season, or even maybe at times in the last two seasons, I've been delighted to be the Matchday Reporter for Manchester United. It's been a tough time, and the last thing I really want to do is moan about Man United, or the last thing I want to do is moan about Man United to a Scouser, but there we go.
Yeah, these things happen, mate. These things happen. Par for the course, comes with the territory and all that. So let's do this then. Let's kick off with the form. We could go further back and have a real sort of in-depth conversation about Manchester United, which I'd love to do, but I don't have the time. Listen, since the Manchester derby, which I'm sure was a day that, you remember fondly, but since then, it's took a turn. Spurs in the Cup, Bournemouth, Wolves, Newcastle, soundly beaten, really, in all of them. I mean, this is such an open-ended question. Feel free to answer it as broadly as you like, but what is the mood like given recent results there?
I mean, I've been a United fan all my life. I've been going Old Trafford for the best part of 20 years. And I think the mood might be the lowest I've ever seen it, I felt like it was always when Moyes took over from Ferguson, and it became evident after we got spanked by you lot and spanked by City. That was really low, because I think people sort of expected it would just continue after Sir Alex Ferguson. Then it was actually might not. But now it's to the point where I think there are some fans that do genuinely believe that Man United are in a relegation scrap now. And I wouldn't necessarily disagree with them when you look at the table and you look at the fact that United have really, really tough games coming up. Obviously, the Liverpool game being the toughest of that. It's really low. When you've got your own players getting booed by large sections of the fan base, it's never nice to see, is it? And it's never nice to see when you see your own players becoming the brunt of it. And that, coupled with what's happened since Ineos have come in, and the decisions that they have made, which at times just feels anti-Manchester United fan. It really feels like quite personal attacks at times from a bloke who was supposed to be a Boyhood United fan.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about sort of the off-the-pitch stuff there, and you've alluded to it, so I'll do it now, really. In terms of sort of the PR own goals that Ineos keep seeming to produce, because that's exactly what they are, ultimately. I mean, you said it as well, it's not as if this is somebody from a far-flung, distant land coming in and not really getting the landscape of a football club and what it means to be part of a football club, because Jim Ratcliffe is exactly as you just explained, he is a Manchester United fan. So it feels even more bizarre that he does seemingly keep making these decisions that do sort of fly in the face of what it means to be part of a football club like Manchester United. I can't quite put my finger on cost cutting, I guess, is the ultimate overall goal, but at the expense of what? It feels odd to me.
Feels like austerity. When you've got the cleaners and the stewards taking these big financial hits, like to the point where he's cut donations to the Manchester United Foundation, the club's charity, other clubs, club-aligned charities as well. For example, we have a charity which helps out ex-players if they're struggling financially as well. Contributions to that has been cut. And meanwhile, while this is happening, you've got the likes of Anthony earning what he earns, the likes of Marcus Rashford, who said he doesn't want to be at the club earning what he earns, Casemiro, who has been just an absolute shadow of the player he once was, which admittedly is because he's getting a little bit older, but he's playing like a 40-year-old, not like a fella in his early 30s. It feels like it's a very bottom-up way of doing business. And look, maybe this is the way that you become the richest man in the UK, by making absolutely brutal decisions, which are often more harmful to the working man than any other decisions that you could make. But it really does feel particularly harsh against working class fans at the minute. One thing I will caveat this with is the fact that Sir Jim Ratcliffe is not the owner of Manchester United. He is the part owner. And no doubt all these decisions that are being made, they do fall on him. He's the man who makes the footballing and business decisions now, since the Glazers passed the buck. And one thing I do have to say is Man United are a business that are operating in hundreds of millions of pounds worth of debt. there's not been too many transfer windows where maybe some of those high earners at the club could be moved on, and maybe we will see that in January, maybe we will see that in the summer. But at the minute, based on what we're seeing at the moment, it's not quite what anyone expected from him.
No, far from it, I think. Definitely far from it. And it felt like a lot of the decisions during the summer in particular, whether it be transfer related in terms of recruitment or just generally, were more akin to what a proper football club should look like. And that, to me, as a Liverpool fan, was not good news, ultimately. But ever since that, it's kind of all unravelled. And Dan Ashworth leaving after only months in the job was another element of that as well. But you said there, guys, and I'll pick up on it, in terms of not being able to offload some of the stars, and we are in another transfer window now, of course, the January one's just opened. There's another side story to all of the football stuff right now when it comes to Manchester United. It's Marcus Rashford, and more recently, it's Joshua Zirkzee, you hinted at the moment earlier on when he got booed off. Like, as well as not winning games or really looking like winning games at the moment on the pitch, I'm aware we play with the weekend, but they don't help, do they? This sort of stuff, the narrative, the interviews, the unrest in the crowd, it's not positive, it's not helpful, like I say.
No, you're right. And maybe what you said earlier on in the video as well about when you asked about how low is it at United right now, maybe these off the pitch things have really contributed to it. The Marcus Rashford situation is such a complicated one because we've got a lad who I have never once doubted his love for Manchester United. I have never once doubted his commitment. At times, I've almost felt like he gets a bit of a harsh run of things by United fans. And that's purely because we expect someone who is, from Wythenshawe, a lad who didn't grow up with much. He's done so much. He's earned so much. We expect him to run and fight for every single ball, but that's not what every footballer does. Like, it doesn't mean that they care less. Dimitar Berbatov, one of our greatest strikers, he would stroll around the pitch. You'd never see him put a tackle in. And I often thought that he does get a bit of a harsh ride, considering especially we know what he can do. With Marcus Rashford, for me personally, and this is just my personal view and where I see it, is that he's just not consistent enough to be one of the highest earners at the football club and to be someone that expects to play week in, week out. He's just not consistent enough if you want to be a team that, for United at the minute, it's just staying in the league. But then the next step is finishing top 6, finishing top 4, winning the Premier League. I don't think he's ever going to be that player at any club. He could go to someone like Arsenal and be that second option, if you like, on that left-hand side, which is where I think he's best. And he could really flourish there. But at Man United, if he's at Man United, he needs to be the main man. And he's just not quite got it, I don't think, to be the main man at Man United. Having said all that, I don't think many of our wingers do. I think they're all garbage. I actually think Anthony Elanga is the best of the lot, and we sold him at Nottingham Forest.
Yeah, that just kind of speaks to where the football club's at right now, doesn't it, when it comes to decisions, really, I think it's fair to say. Swinging it right back around to sort of looking ahead to the game. In terms of injuries ahead of this one, Gaz, it's not the worst, but it's the same old name, just Luke Shaw, it's Mason Mount once again. I think Victor Lindelof is another absentee.
Yeah, I mean, Lindelof wouldn't get anywhere near the side for me, and I don't think a lot of United fans, to be fair. I'm surprised he's actually still at the football club. I think it's because now we play with 3 centre-backs, it's always good to have as many as possible. Yeah. Luke Shaw, I think, has just been a giant miss for Manchester United. He is such a good footballer when he's fit, and the problem is he's rarely fit. I think 50% of his time at Man United he's been injured. So at some point, United need to cut the losses on Luke Shaw and go for someone who's consistently more available. Mason Mount is another one. We've really not seen anything from Mason Mount just because he cannot get fit, and there's always something new with him. People say, it's a 60 million, it's a waste of money, And I get that, and it is, but purely because of injuries. It's not because he's come in and not performed. We've just not seen enough of him. Look, we do miss those players, but in terms of players coming back for United, I think it's a massive boost to have someone like Manuel Ugarte coming in. I think in the last few weeks under Amorim particularly, I know the form hasn't been great, but I think he's put in some really good performances in midfield. He does add a little bit of bite that United have lacked. I thought he was good in the derby. And then you've got the likes of Bruno Fernandes coming back as well, who... I understand the criticism labelled at Bruno Fernandes, but I do still think in terms of raw talent, he probably is Manchester United's best footballer. So to have him back in the team is obviously a plus. The problem with Bruno Fernandes is, and I hate that it's me that's bringing this game up because I would have thought it would have been you that brought it up, is when things don't go his way, like the 7-0, you see his head just absolutely pop. And it's almost a detriment having him on the pitch at times when things aren't going his way. But he is one of the few players who can actually pick out a pass and stick one in the top corner from nowhere. So he's got to play.
I was just playing the good host, Gaz, and not bringing it up, mate. I'm always nice to the guests. I'm not gonna dig up old wounds like that. It's not fair. Listen. I have my opinion on Bruno Fernandes. I'm not going to share it with the world right now. However, in terms of moments and in terms of quality, I make you right. We saw it in the game at your place when Jarell Quansah misplaced that pass and he produces that wonder finish. Like, he has that quality in his locker. There's no two ways about it. That does take us nicely on to my next question, however. In terms of key players...
I want you to share your opinion on Bruno Fernandes.
To put it mildly, I don't think he's captain material. Mm-hmm. Listen, good footballer. I'd say good footballer. I wouldn't want him leading my football club, nor me into battle. Let's put it that way. For all the reasons you kind of just suggested there, actually, that when the going got tough, he was the first one to shirk it, really, and the first one to throw his toys out the pram. I don't have that down as a leader, really. You know what I mean? It's not for me, that personally, but that's by the by. Let's do key players, danger men, shall we? You just mentioned two there who I tend to agree with, but the name I've got down on my list here is Ahmad. It feels like he is the one right now for Man United.
Yeah, he's in great form, Amad Diallo. He can do something which not many other Manchester United wingers have been adept at in the last few years, and that is high pressing as a winger, and actually successful high pressing as well, intelligent pressing. It's one thing running after the ball, it's another thing actually doing it at the right times. We've seen it since he's come back into the team after Ten Hag got sacked. Just an offshoot of that, by the way. Absurd that Erik Ten Hag never played this lad. Absolutely insane. He's been fantastic. So many times we've seen him win the ball high up the pitch, create goals or score goals himself. He scored massive goals, obviously against you guys last season as well. In the derby, he is a very grounded individual as well. There's been plenty of accusations at certain United players that they get a bit too big for the boots because, you know, they're at Man United, they're at one of the biggest clubs in the world, and they just think they've made it. It's not the case for him. I think he's got a fantastic attitude. One thing I will say is I still don't think the consistency is there with him. He has these incredible moments, but in the last few games, we've seen him missing chance after chance after chance. And although on the ball, he still does look like our most creative threat, especially our most creative threat who actually has pace on the wings, he does lack that consistency at times, but we know he's capable of big moments. Another player I'll throw in as well, who has been injured for a lot of this season and maybe has flattered to deceive slightly since he's come back into the team, it is young Kobbie Mainoo. He's just an absolute talent, this lad. And it's him or Amad Diallo are the two players really that I'm thinking, if Manchester United are to ever get into that top echelons of English football again, if it might be in the next, if it's going to be in the next 8 years, then those two are the only players that I could think, I could imagine you being part of that. The rest of them, no chance.
No, I'm with you on that, to be honest with you. And they are the two sort of shining lights. And I probably would have had sort of Kobbie Mainoo ahead of Ahmad in sort of my pecking order, if you like. But as you said there, I think he came off the bench the other night, didn't he? It feels like he hasn't quite had the same season as he had last year up until now. But yeah, still an amazing talent. And yeah, football I actually quite like to watch, as much as it pains me to admit it.